This presentation examines the explicit historical and New Testament fulfillments of the prophecies found in Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 3. Isaiah 53 will serve as the control data set of prophecy, which we will cross-reference against the historical results found in the New Testament. The analysis begins with the opening question of the text. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 1 asks, "Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?" The prophet poses a core query, anticipating a disconnect between the message of the Messiah and its reception by the expected audience. This suggests that the ultimate revelation of divine power would not be recognized by the demographic that spent centuries waiting for it. To find the historical explanation for Isaiah's question, we look to the writings of the New Testament. In Romans chapter 10, verses 16 through 21, the Apostle Paul addresses this specific point. Paul notes that while a remnant believed, the nation of Israel largely remained disobedient to the gospel report. He highlights the irony that the Gentiles, those who did not historically seek the Lord, were the ones to whom the gospel was ultimately manifested. In this context, the arm of the Lord is defined as the revelation of God's gospel and mercy to this Gentile audience. The prophetic report was validated not by the expected religious elite, but by an unanticipating outsider demographic, fulfilling the paradoxical nature of the text. The focus now shifts to the physical and social origins of the Messiah. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 2 states this, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." The tender plant references Isaiah 11:1, representing a fragile shoot growing from the humiliated and cut down royal line of the house of David. The root out of a dry ground describes the spiritually dead state of the Jewish nation across Galilee and Judea during the first century. Personally, this implies that the Messiah would grow up in unfavorable financial and social circumstances, contrary to standard expectations for royalty. This socioeconomic obscurity was a planned prophetic detail that subverted human expectations of divine majesty. Isaiah 53:2 concludes by claiming he possesses no form nor comeliness, and no beauty that would provoke desire. This corresponds to a historical anomaly. The New Testament contains no information regarding the physical appearance, stature, or complexion of Jesus. This silence contrasts with standard historical biographies, which typically provide physical details of their subjects. This omission leaves the reader without a physical template, which effectively prevents the formation of a historical likeness in painting or statuary. The lack of physical allure directs the observer to contemplate his moral beauty, holiness, and benevolence instead. Without physical or regal splendor, the text ensures that any attraction to the Messiah is based on the substance of his truth. We turn now to the Messiah's familiarity with human suffering and rejection. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3, begins by describing him as despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. John chapter 6, verses 66 through 67 provides a historical example. Following a difficult teaching, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him, showing he was rejected even by those who initially followed him. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23 further explains his daily environment. During his ministry, Jesus was continually encompassed by the physical disease and intense suffering of the local population. This daily exposure to the visceral suffering of first-century Judea meant the title Man of Sorrows was a literal observation of his lived environment. The prophecy regarding the world hiding its face began its fulfillment with the Messiah's closest confidants. The latter half of Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3 states, "And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not." Luke chapter 22, verses 57 through 60 records this. Peter, facing the threat of arrest in the courtyard, denied any association with Christ 3 times, literally hiding his face from his former commitment. At the moment of his arrest in Gethsemane, all of his remaining disciples abandoned him and fled into the night. Matthew chapter 26, verse 56 adds another layer of abandonment. The isolation described in the prophecy began not with the Roman state, but through the flight of his chosen leaders. This rejection expanded from private betrayal to public, systemic condemnation by the state and the crowds. Matthew chapter 27, verse 22 records the crowds actively rejecting him in favor of the prisoner Barabbas. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 30, Roman soldiers mock him, physically turning their faces in scorn while beating him. Mark chapter 3, verse 21 shows that even his peers and friends lacked esteem for him, attempting an intervention because they believed he was out of his mind. Matthew 27, verse 46 records the final isolation on the cross, where Jesus cried out as even the Father seemed to turn his face away. Across every level of society, from his inner circle to the Roman state, the New Testament accounts of rejection mirror the descriptions found in Isaiah's text. This concludes our overview.